All right, what's going on? So we're going to continue the path that we're on with these spooky season videos, video reviews, and this one's going to be about X. Let's go. All right, so X, written and directed by Ty West. This is another film that was I wasn't going to watch, but I was pleasantly surprised, and I actually found that I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. If you don't know, you probably do, but if you don't, X is a film set in the 1970s, and it follows a group of young filmmakers setting out to make a porn film, but not just any porn film. They're going to make a film that is an elevation of the form of pornographic entertainment. That's the goal. So they go to this home in middle of nowhere in Texas somewhere, owned by an older couple, and they're allowed onto the property to shoot their film. The older couple doesn't know that's what they're doing, but this is what they're doing. That's the plan. So that's what we have. This is our premise. Now, let's get into the good stuff. This film feels like, so when I watched it, so my sister, she asked me what I thought about it. And my first thought was how much of a throwback, a solid throwback it felt to slasher films of the 1970s. So you think Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you think of John Carpenter's Halloween, the original, and that's sort of what the energy is. And at the heart of it, you've got really there is a love story at the core. In a way, there's a couple different things happening. You have the love story between Pearl and her husband, Harold, it's weird because you don't see that in horror slasher films from the perspective of the monster, the killers, the threat. Make no mistake, Pearl and her husband, Harold, are the threat. More so Pearl, because she's sort of the driving force for all the mayhem that ensues in this situation here. So Pearl is the ringleader. There is a heart that we get from the monster, and that is present here. This film is a slow burn. It takes a while before you start seeing bodies drop, right? And I think Pearl is the same way. Both films do that, and that's kind of cool. That in a lot of ways it feels closer to Halloween in that way, where that first film, it takes time for things to build up before you start seeing people get jacked up. With the exception of the opening sequence of that film. After that, it's a slow burn up to when Michael Myers hits the scene and he starts jacking people up. And this film is a lot like that. This is a deliberate build up to when stuff happens. While we're watching everything being built, we're getting a glimpse into the older couple and who they are and how they operate and what's going on with them. And while at the same time we see what's going on with the young kids who are out there excited about creating. They're excited about making movies, making their porn art film, and that is it's interesting to see those different things play out with each other, and they are not at odds. It works. And again, I'll say one other thing about Pearl. Here, you also understand when things start happening, which is really not until the last, towards the last act is when things really start happening. At the end of the second act and beginning of the third act, you understand, like with Pearl, the film Pearl, you understand why she's operating the way she is. She's in this position where she's feeling you know, like she needs some attention. You know, she's been in this marriage with Harold for, you know, whatever, X amount of years, 50, 60 years, whatever it is. And, you know, she hasn't been touched in the ways that she wanted it in a while, probably. There's a whole bunch of things that are going on. So you understand why she gets enticed by the film project that the young kids are on her property making, and why she wants to sort of remember and feel wanted. She wants to feel loved and stuff. She never. That's a core sort of cornerstone of her character. And when she doesn't get what she wants, in the ways that she wants it, you know, things don't work out for people. So that's just really what's really going on. One of the things I enjoyed about the film was the conversation it has about age and youth and the things you can do when you're young, and how you only have a limited time to do those things, because when you're older, you can't move the way you used to, and just, you know, you're more limited when you're older. And so I appreciate that for a horror or slasher film. It brings in some wisdom, some reality, in a way that, you know, it's something that is unexpected. I was like, oh, I didn't expect it to hit me like that and make me think about stuff. You know, and it makes you think about your own life and seizing the day, seizing the opportunity for yourself to do things while you're young. And so, and which is what these characters are doing. They're out there in a position where they feel creatively fertile. They're ready to just, you know, they have a passion and they're ready to just make this movie, and and they're excited about it, and it's gonna be awesome. And you know, you lose that from what you know, when you're older, when you see, speaking from being around a lot of older people, you know, some parts of it still live, but you lose a little bit of the, you know, the fervor and the, you know, you can anyway, you know, at least for some of the older people that I've been around, I've seen that. So that conversation is cool. The other thing is that I thought I really appreciated was the way, like with Pearl, here you have a film within a film. We're watching a movie, and we're watching these young people make a movie, and not just any movie. They're making something that is going to be like a masterpiece. This is the idea that this is what they're going in with. And I think if you've seen, if you know about the documentary series After Porn Ends, they're really good documentary. Well, the first one is particularly good. It's probably the strongest, I think, documentary of the three that I've seen. But I bring that up because those films, each of them, particularly the first one though, has former performers, former actors in the adult industry from the 80s, some from the 70s through to, you know, modern day time. And there are clips in that documentary from adult films from the 1970s, during a time when they used to show adult films in theaters. And what I thought was fascinating about actors who performed in films in the 70s, how they spoke about what they were doing. They weren't just making a porn film like how you might see today online or anywhere else. They took it seriously. They were making something that was art. And they were trying to elevate that type of film. They were actually making movies. They were telling stories. It wasn't just a collection of, it wasn't just like sex on screen. There were scripts that were written. There were people that were actually acting. You know, these were people who are trying to make genuine art. And the spirit of that is present in X. You know, one of the camera guy I can't remember his name, but the guy who was the cameraman in this film, he was one of my favorite characters because of how he thought about what they were doing. He talked about how he could edit it. He was already talking about the editing process, and he was so passionate about what he saw, his idea for the finished product, and how it was going to be this art film, and it was going to be inspired by stuff, French avant-garde films and stuff. That stuff's kind of cool. Like for some people that might sound pretentious, like, oh, you're trying to be an artiste, whatever it is. No, but that kind of thought process you see present in performers from the 1970s who were in those films. And the other thing is when you see there's a sequence in the film where you get to see how what shots look like from the camera that this guy was using, and they framed it exactly like how you would see in adult films in the 1970s. It's really cool. Like it's a yeah, there's sex and stuff, and it's but it's not all like how now. There's not a lot of mystery if you watch any of the and this is something that came up in some of the documentaries too, where performers talk about adult films today. There's less mystery. There's less art in it. It's just more just about the sex and whatever fetish that people are into. Just give them that. This is not the case for every studio. There are several studios probably in the adult industry that actually put in more effort or a different level of effort to tell stories too, along with including different sex scenes and stuff like that. But not everything was shown. So the X is a rated R movie, so you're not going to see all these body parts and everything, but you're going to see stuff that's going to be okay. That's worthy of the R rating, and just you get a certain close-ups, certain shots they had. It was exactly like what you would see in those films and adult films of the time, and that's a little thing, but just the detail in that is cool. It's like, oh, they really, they were paying attention. The production design, top notch. You feel like you're in the 1970s. But what's extra cool about that, particularly if you've seen Pearl, is if you look at the grounds where the house is, right? There are a lot of references to what the house looked like in the 1910s. And you look at the landscape and where the house is, where the barn is, and logistically things feel the same. But also there are elements of the house and things that are run down or whatever. You believe that this is the same area from 60 years ago, just not as well kept as it might have been at the turn of the century. And it's really cool, like the detail of that. It's cool to see, like, oh, look at the house and look at how old it. And you see, like the opening, one of the first shots of the film, when the sheriff is going up to the house, you see the axe. You see the axe, and if you've seen Pearl, you know what time it is. You know about that axe. So, and it's rusted and it's old, and you see the floor, the boards, when he steps up the stairs to the house. That's the exact same house, but you see how much older it looks and how dilapidated some of the wood looks, and when you go in the house and how just it feels like an old person's home where there's like stuff everywhere, and it feels like it hasn't really been organized in some time. And if you've been to any older person's home, any mature person's home, we'll say that, any mature person's home, mature in age. You can almost smell the must of the surfaces. You can smell some of the old stuff, the dust in it, and they did a fantastic job with the production design within the house, outside of the house, on the grounds, how isolated it is, and it feels exact. It's like it's the exact same place, 60 years difference, 60 years time in between the stuff. So that it's cool. It's really cool how they did that. I really liked that. A couple issues I had with the film are as follows. So the makeup, prosthetics, and stuff like that. For the most part, it's good. For a long time, you can't really tell if Mia Goth is playing Pearl or not. If you didn't know. Like, I didn't know when I first watched it. I didn't know that was her. It took me a minute to catch. Oh, that is her. That's and for the most part, the prosthetics is great on both Harold and Pearl. But what happens? There's at least one scene in the film where I think, depending on the lighting or whatever, it's at night, whatever it is, where the prosthetics didn't look as good to me. It felt like, oh, you can tell it's a young person made up. younger person, and that took me out. And it's really a small section, and it's in one scene, and it's really like a one or two cuts. Really, that it's that minimal to me, and that was the only time it jumped out to me. It's like, oh, dang it! I wish I didn't feel like this was a young person. I wanted to be immersed in the what I see, and that Pearl's this older, sort of 90. I don't know how old she's supposed to be, 80, late 80s, early 90s, aged woman. And that moment, I didn't fully buy it. The other thing is, there's things that Pearl's doing with her body that, and if you've been around people that age, and I have, that you have to suspend your disbelief with how quickly they're moving, how much energy they actually have, and how much strength they have. Those are the huge three big things that, again, this is a horror movie, a slasher movie, and inherently there's something scary and unsettling about an older person, older woman, who you think is supposed to be very sweet and gentle. You know, she's at the end of her life. She's just the sweetest woman. And it's unsettling to know that she's actually a killer. Like, she's a monster. Like, right? There's something about that. Older people, it's a lot like looking at babies and how babies in horror films is unsettling. It's the same thing for older people. Both of those extremes are very cute, very sweet, very, oh, you want to just like, protect them and be, oh, they're you got to be all lovey-dovey with them. But the element of that, the idea of them being devious and evil, is supremely unsettling. And that's here. So I understand why that's there and what that sort of makes the horror, that adds to the horror of it. But it's hard to believe that at certain points Pearl is as active as she is, as quick as she is, and as strong as she is, for how old she's supposed to be. So I had to suspend my disbelief on some of those different things, and how old she's supposed to look. That one sequence is a good example where the makeup feels like makeup and not actual age, So that's the one thing I think was my only issue with it. Yeah, there's a couple other things, but whatever. It doesn't hurt the film. It doesn't hurt it for me. I think overall this is a fantastic throwback to 70s, early 80s horror action or horror slasher films. And my favorite thing about the movie, probably just on a more, what I keep thinking about, what I keep going back to, is the final confrontation with Maxine and Pearl. These parallels have been built up between the two characters throughout the film. I think the first time they sort of see each other is awesome. It's a subtle primer for their eventual matchup. And it's cool to see the different Easter eggs, the different parallels between the two characters be dropped, and have them. It's really all going to come down to just to them. Everyone around them is not going to be in the mix, and it's going to be Pearl against herself, essentially, against her spiritual younger self, and that's kind of nice. I appreciated that, and I liked the confrontation a lot. It reminded me a lot of Halloween. Again, I keep going back to Halloween because that's to me. I will have to watch that. I didn't watch it this year yet, but I have to watch it before this month is done, because to me that remains probably one of the strongest films in the subgenre of a slasher ever made. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is probably in there too. I'm sure it's probably in there. I haven't seen it all the way through, so I can't really speak to it fully. But to me, Halloween, it still holds up today, and I think a lot of other films, in some way, remind me in that vein. Remind me of that, and X reminded me of that too. Like, I feel like the last act of Halloween, when Laurie and Michael Myers have to face off, feels like spiritually what X does. This film does between Pearl and Maxine. Yeah, this was a good film, and I think the other thing I'll say that I could have done without some of the I was grateful for some of the kills not being as graphic or as sort of in your face as some of the other kills. I could have done without at least one particular kill felt like it was too much. But and that's when you wish that slasher films today go back to how they were actually made in the 1970s. You would never see that much gore and blood in an actual 1970s slasher film. You might in a Grindhouse type one maybe, but in a mainstream one, I don't know. Look, whatever. I don't know what I'm talking about. Don't listen to me. Just bottom line, X is cool. Watch it, and if you like that one, check out Pearl. You'll like that too. I think it's a different animal. They're two completely different films, but as companion pieces, they work so well. It's actually really cool to watch them together and just see how they talk to each other. I'm excited, actually. I'm curious about Maxine. We'll say that. I can't say that I'm like super juiced to see it, but Maxine, if you don't know, is the forthcoming third film in this X series. Maybe it's going to be trilogy. I think it actually would be cool if it stops at 3. If it just hits Maxine and that's it, I'd be happy with that. But we'll see. We'll see what Ty West and company have up their sleeves. In the meantime, I think that's going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching. If you've made it through the end, you're a saint. Yeah, come on back. We've got some more reviews coming up pretty soon. In the meantime, I'll see you later.